Hello there. What is going on, everyone? Today, we're looking at Armada from a balance perspective. I'm asking the question, what are the top 10 cards that need a points adjustment? Armada has been pretty hyped up lately with the recent announcements at Adepticon of really cool future things like a new round of store championships with new promo cards and Rapid Reinforcements 2 that is a lot farther along in the development process than we had thought. So very, very cool, and it's led people to kind of revisit some older Armada concerns like, well, are they going to ever get around to doing a points adjustment? It was something that was definitely talked about that the previous developers over at FFG really wanted to do. I think it was a known problem that there were some minor points adjustments that needed to go into effect. And as new things have come out, and as you know, the Clone Wars has come out, the second Clone Wars wave has come out, as well as Rapid Reinforcements 1, and then with Rapid Reinforcements 2 on the horizon, it's got a lot of people wondering, are they going to make any changes? Primarily because, hey, there's some, you know, what we've seen so far might lend itself to either being not the final version of certain cards. Like, for example, Governor Price for Rapid Reinforcements 2 looks maybe a little overpowered, depending on which list you're playing. And you know, people are wondering, does that mean there's other changes coming, or does that mean it's not the final version? So today we're going to be talking about what if there are other changes coming. What would be my top 10 list for cards that need a points adjustment? If you are new here to the channel, I would love to invite you to stick around, subscribe. We are doing a big, massive Star Wars Shatterpoint giveaway for an entire core set. That's going to come in the form of a $165 Amazon gift card. If you want to have a chance to enter to win that, you just have to be a subscriber and leave a comment on this or one of my videos. It's as simple as that. And plus, while you're here, check out our Discord and Crabbok.com and all of this other cool stuff that I've got down in the description below. There's a whole bunch of links there. You can check out social media links. Jump into our family-friendly Discord. We talk about games like Star Wars Armada, X-Wing, Legion, Shatterpoint, Star Wars stuff in general. Pretty cool environment. And head over to Crabbok.com if you're a new Armada player or looking to test out a build. We've got some art content of some expansions that I've made for the game. They're not official, but they're fun. And of course, the AI expansion that I've developed that's on Crabbok.com. You can test out a build against yourself, which is always a fun thing to do if you're trying to get a build and see how it's going to flow a little bit, maybe before you play another person, or you just feel like playing solo, you can do that. So let's go ahead and hop into this list. Now, this isn't every single list. It's just 10 particular changes that I think I'd like to see. And I'd like to hear from you guys what you want to see as far as points adjustment. And did you guess any of the cards that would be on this list? Have you guessed the #1 spot before you get to it? Like, don't skip ahead. But also, you know, maybe there's something I missed that you think I should have included. Maybe something that was on my number 11 that didn't quite make the cut, did make the cut for you guys. And if you can, also based on this, if you can tell which faction I've kind of geared these a little bit more towards than others. So let's talk this out. Plus, by the way, I do think there's more than 10 cards that need points adjustments. There's a lot of things that just are underused that I would love to see get a little cheaper, but they didn't quite make this list. So this isn't every change. This is just the top 10. Let's kick things off with number 10, Darth Vader Commander. I think Darth Vader Commander needs a points adjustment for a number of reasons. I think he's awesome. I'd love to see him get played more. He certainly got played a lot in the early waves of the game coming out in Wave 2. He was a very popular commander. He was one of my favorite commanders, but he also is one of the most expensive commanders in the whole game at 36 points. And he has just gotten weaker and weaker over time. One of the things he enabled was dice mitigation, which is great. And you get, hey, you can reroll dice. But it also hurts you to do that because you have to spend a defense token to do it. So in addition to this cost, he's got a nasty cost right there. But not only that, he's got a third cost that maybe you don't see. You have to look a little closer. It has to do with the opportunity cost, because Darth Vader exists in so many forms. There's 2 different squadrons that use Darth Vader. There's a boarding team and an officer. And so they're all good versions of Darth Vader. So by fielding this as your commander, you lock yourself out of running one of Darth Vader's alternative forms in this game. Since he's unique, you can only have you can't have Darth Vader in command and flying a ship, and you know he can't do it all by himself. Vader needs your help. So So yeah, there's a whole bunch of costs to getting dice adjustments, and while dice adjustments are great, since this guy came out, there have been so many other ways to do that. So many other ways to get yourself dice mitigation. You know, fleet commands that give you dice mitigation exist. There's a lot of upgrades that give yourself dice mitigation. Director Krennic. An incredible guy that gives yourself dice mitigation. But the number one, and maybe the frosting on the top of this cake of my argument for Vader, is the Darth Vader Officer, which gives your whole fleet effectively the same ability, but when only once per game. But when they need it, well, potentially twice per game, depending on how many officers and/or commanders you happen to have on the ship. The Darth Vader Officer, which kind of does the same thing, is only 1 point. What? It's only 1 point for the Darth Vader Officer. Now, it has its own opportunity costs as well, but it does not require you to spend a defense token, especially in a world where there are lots of other ways for your opponent to get rid of your defense tokens. The Darth Vader Officer or the Darth Vader Commander just needs to come down in points. I think he should be kind of in the mid-20s, you know, maybe the mid to high 20s, but somewhere a lot more affordable than 36 compared to the cost that's already on there. Now, if they were to remove the cost or give him some additional ability or something like that, then, you know, errata is also a thing, but I'm not suggesting errata today, although I think he's somebody that could get errata. I think I'm just suggesting points adjustments, and I'd love to see him come down a little bit significantly in the points. He doesn't have to come down to completely be a 20-point commander, but there are other 20-point commanders that are way better than Darth Vader Commander. Just saying. All right, moving up, it's Boba Fett as the in the Slave One. Boba Fett is he's a great squadron, I just think he's a little too expensive. I'd love to fly him more often, and you know, he's not. I don't think he's game breaking. I think he's pretty balanced. You know, he's a nice, effective bomber. You know, the Empire doesn't. I mean, they've got the cheap bombers. They don't have too many crazy good bombers. They've got a few good bombers, but they don't have an overwhelming amount of crazy good bombers. And he's a pretty darn good bomber. He's also got Rogue. He's also pretty effective against other squadrons, and he's an ace, but he's not a scatter ace, so he's not like that crazy. And his ability is just good. It's just good. Look. When you activate, so you already have to be there, right? So at the end, you know, beginning of a round, people are like, okay, well, I know where he's going to be. Empire doesn't have the double activation shenanigans that like Rebels do and things like that. So Boba Fett's just like, he's got a nice, solid ability, special, unique ability, and it's cool. And like it's really bad if it's like an ace, like an interceptor ace or something like that. You're like, oh, okay, Howl Runner has to just take a damage or something like that if you're going up against there. So he has his uses, but still, that would take 3 rounds of Howl Runner being engaged with him or something like that for, you know, and by that time she's going to die anyhow. So it's just, I feel like his ability is a little too weak for this 26-point cost. And just for, you know, for what it's worth, like he's more expensive than just about every other ace in the Empire, including, I mean, like Merrick Steele, who's like the Empire's like golden child, who's only 21 points. So would it be that bad if Boba Fett was like 21 or maybe even 22 points? I don't know. I mean, Rogue is one of the things that really kind of increases his point cost, but I just think 26 is much too high. I'd love to have him brought down just a little bit to make him more feasible, because he's a fun squadron to play, and plus it's Boba Fett. You want to kind of give players that cool thematic experience, but man, it's just a little too high. All right, moving on to, this was number 9, moving on to number 8. It is point defense ion cannons. I teased you with the M. You thought it was going to start with an M. Point defense ion cannons. They're a newer card, and so you might be surprised to see them on this list. I just think they're a little too cheap. They're proving to be extremely good. They are. I mean, honestly, they're too good, I think. I feel like they're too good for the amount of benefit that they give you. There's so many squadron dice fixing mechanics. There's so many of bomber command centers, and it's so many builds that run squadrons. Squadrons are like half of the game. Is well, technically a third of the game, but Squadron play is an incredible amount of gameplay. I'd say it's probably half of Star Wars Armada, because yes, 134, a third of your points can be squadrons, but then the rest of your build can all be dedicated to pushing those squadrons. And point defense ion cannons just kind of shuts down like half of the game. Now, personally, I like that. I like point defense ion cannons being able to shut down a squadron game, because like, if they're never going to get changed, then I can just make sure I run them on every ship I run for the rest of eternity and kind of make myself, you know, semi-immune to squadron damage. But really, it's so much of a benefit when you put it on people. I mean, and granted, another way to do this would be to do some errata with it, maybe limit it to more specific. You've got different traits and keywords on ships, so maybe only certain ship types could be able to take it if they ever get like traits added to all the rest of the ships, or maybe it could become a modification or something like that, you know. But like at 4 points and just an ion cannon, non-huge ship only, not much of a limiter, right? Like I feel like they need to come up in points for PDICs, maybe significantly, you know, because they seem pretty incredible. All right, moving forward. Next is General Madine. General Madine at 10987. This is number 7. Look, he's a good rebel commander. He's not great. But he works on, like, he works best with certain types of ships. He's just you know, I don't see him get taken very often, and I think 30 points is a bit too expensive. Now, what he's doing, you know, because kind of similar to how I talked about Vader, you know, there's an opportunity cost in here that you're not taking another commander. You're not, you know, you're only gaining benefit to nav. Now, from a certain point of view, a lot of ships like to nav. Navigation is a very popular command. If you're a squadron-based fleet, which Rebels do like to run squadrons, right? This means you're going to be kind of stuck doing a lot of squadron commands and, I'm sorry, nav commands and not squadrons. So this means that you're going to kind of run him on a fleet maybe that has to have rogues, if any squadrons at all. So you got a little bit of a limiter there, because he does nothing if you don't have the nav command. Which means that you know, a fleet with Madine is susceptible against rage tokens, or against dial changing shenanigans, and you know, you're basically stuck doing nav, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, because a lot of times you do want to nav, but you don't want to have to nav 100% of the time. And here he's kind of only effective when you are navving. But not only that, you also have like equivalent, I'd say counterpart commanders, you know, like Ozzel for the Empire. 10 points cheaper and doesn't require nav. No, he does something a little different. He changes your speed up and down for free. But this guy gives you extra yaw. Now, you could certainly make the argument that yaw is more valuable than a speed adjustment, because normally tokens can give you a speed adjustment but not yaw, whereas the dial can give you yaw. So I can see him being more expensive than 20 points, but I think 30 is a little too high. I think Madine needs to come down at least 2 points, maybe 4 points. Somewhere in there, just to make him a little bit more, maybe 5 points, to make him a little bit more on par with movement-based commanders, because I think he's just a little too expensive. And also, I wanted to put a rebel commander on this list, so it's my list. I'll do what I want. All right, let's go to number 5. Quad turbo laser cannons. This one has been an Achilles heel of mine for a long time. I used to really like this card in its original version. It's been nerfed so heavily that it kind of bums me out. So a couple of things wrong with this card. First off, it uses turbo laser, which is a highly coveted slot. Turbo laser is one of the biggest ways that you can either get you know, dice fixing or extra dice. And it's 10 points, which marks it pretty expensive. More expensive than even Spinal Armament, which, you know, Spinal Armament is, you know, a great turbo laser. Or Enhanced Armament is a great turbo laser in certain fleets, like Akbar. But Quad Turbo Laser is also been, you know, it's also been changed to be a modification. So now you cannot run it, like on the few ships that can take multiple turbo lasers, you can't run this and Spinal anymore, like on the Liberty, when, like, you know, I believe this came out with the Liberty, but this or a Simoon or something like that, you know, you can't run this and a Spinal to potentially get one extra die on top of normal. And so I kind of see why they wanted to say, hey, too many people are running like something like quad turbo laser cannons and spinal armament and getting, you know, not just 1 extra die, but 2 extra dice. I kind of see that, but I feel like it was changed a little bit it was overcorrected, and I'd like to see it dialed back a little bit. If it's going to stay a modification, again, I'm not really suggesting specific errata here, although it might need an errata. I don't know if it needs an errata. I just think it's too expensive. I think the point cost needs to come down because as it stands right now, there's virtually no reason to take this card. Because it's your modification, you're getting rid of, like, there's so many better cards that could go in this place that are modifications. Some cards are better than this that aren't even modifications, because it's 10 points, it's using up your modification, and it's using up your turbo laser, and it's got this huge qualifier that you have to have an accuracy already. And not only that, it has to be a red accuracy, which is pretty rare. You've only got a 1/8 chance of getting that. And so if it does that, then it gives you another red die. It's not even giving you a die of your choice. It's getting you another red die set to an accuracy. Now here, the funny thing is, usually 1 accuracy is all you need. Usually, I mean, there are some cases where a 2nd accuracy is just what the doctor ordered. But usually 1 accuracy is fine. This one really kind of works better if you have something else to maybe like change that extra accuracy or re-roll it or change it to a, you know, change an accuracy to a different face, you know, or if you got extra re-roll shenanigans, you know, like, but that increases the cost even further because now you need to build this into another combo to really make it effective. And okay, but for that same price, I could have just gotten an extra die, you know, I don't like it at all. I think it needs to come down. You know, now if this were 5 points, I might take it. If it were 4, I feel like, and again, maybe 4 points is the wrong answer here, but I would test it at 4 points. I would love to see this be 4 points, and then it's like, okay, I could see taking this then. I don't think it would be an all-the-time take, but I could see potentially taking this at 4 points. Maybe 5. Maybe 5. I don't know. That's a big maybe. I mean, I feel like there's so many other ways to get accuracies now, too. And like this one doesn't even help you get an accuracy. Because this one will a lot of times do nothing. If you roll, you don't get an accuracy. Sorry about your luck. 10 points and your modification out the window, you know. So, no, not a fan. Number 4. Interdictor Combat Refit. You could say both Interdictors, but more so the Interdictor Combat Refit. I would lump both Interdictors potentially, but this one was initially put out to be the more expensive Interdictor over the Suppression Refit, was only 90, and superior, like very much superior. You know, the Interdictor Combat Refit, while it changed a blue die to a red, and has an extra, you know, it has a blue-black for anti-squadron, it loses the experimental retrofit, or loses one of the 2 experimental retrofits, and that's why you bring an Interdictor. Nobody brings an Interdictor for the, I mean, the 5 engineering is cool, but that's not why you bring an Interdictor. You don't bring an Interdictor for, you know, well-rounded, you know, moderate dice placement. You bring an Interdictor for experimental retrofit. So if you're going to go with this combat retrofit that sacrifices its experimental retrofit for, I guess, more of a well-balanced red dice allotment, and it's, you know, well-balanced but unimpressive red dice allotment, I think you need a significant, you know, decrease to the cost. I think if you bring this down to like maybe 80, it'd be a way for you to get an Interdictor that has just 1 experimental retrofit and possibly worse dice. And I say worse dice because if you're running this thing for combat, a lot of times you're running disposable capacitors on there, and then you're a really good ion cannon like enhanced ions or something like that, and then you want the suppression refit to really maximize the blue dice. And so like, I feel like the suppression refit's just in every possible way superior, so the combat refit is the one that really should be the cheaper entry level version. So that's my thoughts on the combat refit. It might require some errata as well, but I think a points adjustment is a good place to start with this one. All right, we're getting into the top 4. This is number 5, isn't it? I forget which number I'm on. I'm gonna keep going though. It doesn't matter which number. So you in the comments, tell me what number I'm on. I don't know. I think I skipped a number somewhere. All right. Well, let's go to number 4. Victory 2 Star Destroyer. Both victories, victories across the board could come down, but I wanted to focus on the biggest offender, the Victory 2. I still like the Victory 2. I feel like the Victory 1, is a great deal cheaper, is probably a better target for the newer, like, fixed titles like Harrow and stuff like that. So I think the Victory 2 needs the most attention. It suffers from being like the first ship for Star Wars Armada, and everything else has kind of grown up around it. Now, surprisingly enough, a lot of content from the initial wave, even a lot of stuff from the core set, is still competitive today, is still excellent today. CR90s are great. Nebulons are good. Howlrunner is great. Luke Skywalker's good. TIE Fighters and X-Wings are good. So like a lot of the stuff that you get in that core set, awesome stuff. Really good stuff. But the Victory, while I still enjoy it, it's more of a challenge to like run it and still try to win. It's not awful. It's just out-edged by everything else in its point cost and its weight class. And so there are better options than this. So if it were to come down, I would love to have it be a more affordable medium ship, because I feel like I'd like to see this a little bit closer in the 70s. Like to make it a little bit more comparable to the assault frigate. I don't know. It's so slow, and it suffers from maneuverability so much. Like, it can be good, but it also becomes very, very predictable. And in a world where every other ship can outmaneuver, can fly circles around the Victory, it needs to come down a little bit more in points. It really does. Especially for only 5 more points, you can get an Onager. So, yeah, Victory 2 definitely needs to come down. Number 3. Linked Turbo Laser Towers. This is the best card in the entire game, and needs to be probably a little bit more expensive than it is. It's absolutely fantastic. I love this card. It's one of the greatest cards they've ever done, and it's a little too good for the point cost that they put it in. I'll take this back to the quad turbo laser cannons. They're 3 points more, and they're a modification, and they're worse. If you got red dice, this is something you want to do. If you have red dice in your squadron armament too, this is even better. It's incredible. But it works all the time, and it has multiple things that it can do. Also, that's the thing. It's an all-comers. It works in 100% of lists. Provided you have red dice, right? First of it always gives you a red die every time you attack. This is I'm sorry, it gives you a red die reroll every time you attack. This is huge. Red dice have blanks. Red dice always need to be rerolled. So it's a great dice mitigation, right? And again, yet another reason why Vader Commander is less necessary now, right? So again, why he needs to come down. Red dice rerolls, great. Both of your attacks, no problem. Oh, were you doing a squadron attack? Did you have red dice in your anti-squadron attack? Boom, no problem there. Oh, do you have salvo? Oh, all of your salvo, since you can't add dice to a salvo attack, but you can re-roll them. Are you doing an ignition attack? No problem. Any attack you're doing. And again, this works for more than one attack per round. Works for both of your regular attacks plus any of your salvo attacks. If you do 2 squadron attacks and you've got red dice in your armament, there's almost no limit to how many rerolls you can get out of this card. I guess there's probably a limit. It's probably somewhere around like 18 or 19, or there's probably a cap or something like that. So really, really incredible. I'm sure somebody could come up with like what's the maximum number of rerolls you could get, and I think it would revolve every single squadron being in double arc, and you arc twice or something like that. But that won't happen. But not only are you getting all these great rerolls out of this card, you're also gaining a bonus to squadron attack. You get to add 2 dice to a squadron attack. Now, if you do that, you can't attack any other squadrons on that particular attack. So this is really useful if you're gonna flak. You've got like maybe one squadron that's like in your side, and the rest are in your front or something like that. You just hit that one first on your side. You exhaust it, and then you're adding 2 dice, and then you go ahead with your other attack, whether it be a squadron attack or a ship attack. But yeah, getting 2 extra dice, and by the way, you get to pick the color. So if you want to add 2 red dice, boom, you got your built-in reroll for that as well. It's absolutely insane. how good this card is, and it's taken a disproportionate amount to the other turbo laser options that are available as well. It needs to go up a little bit. Maybe not too much, because I still really like it. But yeah, it needs to go up. I could see this one being like a 9 or a 10. I still think it would be worth it. I think it would be still valuable at a 9 or a 10. But at least it would be like, okay, well, let me think about what I'm going to take here. You know. All right, moving up into number 2, Admiral Sloane. I love her. I love the character. I love the books that she's written in. I love so much about her. Oh, but I hate flying against her. She's one of the most incredible commanders you'll ever see in Star Wars Armada. She's absolutely insane. She makes squadrons. She makes TIE fighters into gods. 2 TIE fighters can completely strip the brace off of your flagship just like that before you can even know what's happening. You know, that can happen. It can happen on the first turn of the game. It can happen on the first activation of the game, depending on, you know, how everybody is set up and how the, you know, what, like for certain objectives where you deploy a little bit closer. It's absolutely gross. And just got 2 TIE interceptors can just, you know, boom, distance 5, activate, boom, boom, boom. Oh, you know, 2 accuracies, done. You know, insane. So it lets, you know, these anybody without rogue, which Empire doesn't need to run rogues that much, especially when she's out. I mean, the Empire wants to run a lot of TIE fighters anyway. This turns them into just TIE fighters are now all on steroids. TIE interceptors are now on steroids. TIE fighters are so cheap, you know, that like this just amps them up like crazy. It basically means they can't possibly have a bad roll, because no matter what you roll on that blue die, you get to do something good with it. Damage is always good. A crit, you get a reroll, and an accuracy you get to spend to roll a defense token. It only becomes bad with an accuracy after your opponent has no defense tokens left. And you get to choose and spend. Not choose and exhaust, but you get to choose and spend, which means if it's already exhausted, you get to spend it again, which means it's gone. Absolutely insane. There are some counters to her, but they are few and far between. So she's still a very, very safe bet to bring. Also, she's only 24 points. It's insane. It's insane. She's the most effective commander in the world, arguably, and she's one of the least expensive. She could be 38 points, and she would still get taken a lot. You know, a lot. Maybe 40 points is appropriate for her. I don't know exactly. I'd like to see her get a significant look and points increase, at least into the 30s, but hopefully on the higher spectrum of the 30s, if not the first, you know, maybe 42. Maybe 42 for Sloane, just because she's been running rampant for too long. She's got to pay the point tax for her years of Imperial dominance. I don't know. It's just a thought. I'd like to see her get a points increase. And moving on to the number 1 spot. Have you guessed it yet? Have you guessed it yet? Okay, here it comes. Here it comes. Drum roll. All right. Number 1, the Onager. If you guys haven't, whether you pronounce it Onager or Onager, I call it Onager. But I've heard it called both ways, and I'm going to say it my way. Look, Star Wars, you can say whatever you want. You can say a lot of stuff. People say AT-AT. I say AT-AT. And you can say whatever you want to say. But I don't say AT. I say ATST, though. I don't say ATST. You know, basically, Star Wars is a world in which you can pronounce stuff however you want. You can say Tantive 4, or you can say Tantive 4. You can say Tantive 4. You know, you can say it all. So I say Onager. I'm singling out the test bed in this case. The Onager Star Destroyer is less broken, but I think both versions of the Onager do need to go up in points. I think they need to go up significantly. Look, the super weapons that come with these things have completely and massively changed the game. Being able to shoot beyond distance 5 is already strong, but being able to shoot at distance 10 or double distance 5 across the board, shooting on the first round of the game even, before you taking out flotillas and maybe even other small ships before your opponent can react, is absolutely insane, and it's very, very, very strong. Maybe not insane, but very, very strong. But this being only 90 points, right? Or I'm sorry, 96 points, but being in the 90s, being less than 100 points, right? It's I think in my head when I said only 5 points more, you get an Onager. All right, sorry, 11 points more than a victory, you get an Onager. This thing is absolutely insane. Not only, I mean, some people have said it should be unique, and maybe we need errata and changes to how Onagers work or how ignition attacks work. I mean, there's certain ones I think are universally agreed upon. For example, if you are within range of being able to salvo, you should be able to salvo an ignition attack. There's no reason why I fly up right next to you and you're like, and you attack, I can't use my salvo. Oh, because it's an ignition attack. You know, like I feel like that's a rule that could easily get changed. But I've also suggested things like, what if ignition were changed to small, medium, and long range placement of the token to just distance 1, distance 2, and distance 3, respectively. You know, I think there's a lot of discussion that we can have about how to change these to make them a more enjoyable play experience for everybody involved, including the person who's getting shot at. But I think it starts with a point adjustment, because even without the super weapon upgrade cards, they're still incredible for their point cost. I mean, granted, they have a built-in ignition attack that's at close range; they can still fire, but they've got good dice. They've got speed 3 capability with 2 yaw, which is great. They have a built-in salvo. Only Imperial ship to have native salvo, plus brace and redirect. They've got 10 hull. 10 hull, more than most, at only 96 points. They've got 5 shields in the front, where they are pointed at. Whoever is coming at you is, you know, and it's a wide enough front arc that, you know, despite the relatively narrow ignition attack, the front arc still extends wider than that. And the side arc, if you're able to come around the side's actually got more red dice than the front does. Well, at least the native front arc. You know, they have, even without the ignition token, they're still good. Or without being able to fire the super weapon or the ignition attack at all, they're still good. But you add that on, and the amount of play, the amount of times they're taken, and they can be played in relative safety. There's like no risk versus reward. I feel like the Onager should have been a glass cannon, and it's a solid steel cannon. That's the problem. Like, this should have been a ship that had like 6 hull if it was going to be a large ship. It should have been like the lowest hull large ship you've ever seen. Definitely less than 9. A Venator has 9. This should have been way more fragile than a Venator. Should have had way less shields. You know, maybe like a 2-2-2-1 or something like that. You know, it should have been, you know, more difficult. And it should probably have had a victories kind of movement. You know, so like you're getting around me, I can't reposition. Oh, you flew, you survived, and now you're gonna, you know. So that's all errata talk. I don't know. I think there's discussions to be had. I think it starts with the point cost. I have actually done some sample list building of just increasing the point of all Onagers by 30 points each, and I can still make a double Onager list that would probably be effective. So basically, I built a list at only up to 340 points, leaving with 2 Onagers and some other ships, so leaving 60 points off the board, like a 60-point bid, just to see if like 30 points was completely out of the question. I feel like even at a 30-point increase, they're still going to be viable, but we'll have to wait and see. I would love to see these go up by probably not more than 30 each, but I think there's other things you could do also. What would probably make the most sense is for like a 10 to 15 point increase, and combined with some other changes that make the ship more enjoyable. That's probably something closer to what probably should really happen. But those are some of my thoughts. I want to hear what you guys think. Let me know down in the comment section. Also, you can jump in our Discord. Share your thoughts on points rebalance for Star Wars Armada. I would love to see a new card pack come along with a points rebalance that also has all of the rapid reinforcements stuff, and maybe even some new rapid reinforcements. You know, like, I'd love to see more cards come out in a card pack. You know, that's just available to everybody, so you don't have to print your own, or, you know, you do any kind of weird stuff like that. It'd be pretty cool. All right, guys, let's put a pin in that and keep talking about it and all the other places. I will talk to you guys later. I want to thank you all so much for watching. Big thanks to my patrons. You guys are the superheroes of the day. Thank you so much for your continued support. I will talk to you later. May the Force be with you. Live long and prosper. Be excellent to each other. Party on, dudes. So say we all. You can't take the sky from me. And cowabunga.